It was called the Atomic Age in the fabulous 50s. The gray mood of World War II was soon swept away. This was an era when Americans had fun. The joyful mood of the 50s came from the booming post-war economy. Factories were turning out products to satisfy the growing consumer appetite in America and to meet the needs of a post-war Europe. The defense industry kept military supplies flowing in reaction to the tensions of the Cold War. Also, the nation began building straight up in the cities and far out in the country. America's economy was the biggest in the world.
It's not safe to hope for the best without preparing for the worst. Our object is not aggression. We need not become militaristic, but we must keep our Army, our Navy, our Air Force at ready strength.
Because of the military deadlock in Korea, Truman's clash with MacArthur, war, bread inflation, and whiffs of scandal from the White House, I was successfully elected to be the president. After I was elected, I went on a flying 3-day visit to Korea, and 7 months later, after I hinted that we might use atomic weapons, a peace treaty was finally signed. The brutal fighting lasted 3 years, and about 54,000 Americans lay dead. Tens of billions of American dollars had been poured down the Asian sinkhole. Korea remained divided, but they believed that communism had been contained. The shooting had ended, but the Cold War still remained frigidly frozen. One of my most difficult problems was Senator Joseph McCarthy. He accused many people in the government of being a communist, and he was able to flourish during the Cold War. McCarthy finally went down when he accused the U.S. Army of consorting with communists. Western Europe, thanks to the Marshall Plan and NATO, seemed reasonably secure by the early 1950s, but Southeast Asia was a whole different story. America sent aid to South Vietnam as communist guerrillas heated up. In 1957, I created the Eisenhower Doctrine that pledged aid to Middle Eastern nations threatened by communism.
In the beginning of the 1950s, we started the nonviolent protests. My actions of not going to take my seat towards the back of the bus was not intentionally planned. It set off the boycott. I was tired and exhausted, and I sat in the whites-only section. At this time, segregation was enforced, but my friend, Martin Luther King, took my action and converted it into a revolution. The bus boycott led to what was known as the biggest civil rights movement. One of our first greatest achievements was the integration at Little Rock in the late 1950s. As whites disapproved of the blending of whites and blacks, federal troops had to escort blacks to their classroom. The decision of the Warren Court and the Brown v. Board of Education was unanimous and thus supported the civil rights movement. Everyone of all ages were beginning to get involved. Blacks were determined to stop segregation.
I first started building Levittowns in the post-World War II era for returning veterans and their new families. They offered an attractive alternative to cramped central city locations and apartments. It started with our suburbs being produced in an assembly line manner and thousands of identical homes being produced, which soon led to an age of conformity. Conformity was common in the 50s as young and old alike followed group norms rather than going out on their own. Also, traditional roles were revived. During the war, women entered the workforce. However, once men returned, they returned to their traditional roles. Because society became so obsessed with materials and status, everyone started to conform. Children usually conform to their parents' preferences. However, this traditional conformity began to decrease with the rise of pop culture.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. Well, you ain't never gonna ever have you ain't no friend of mine.
This time, TV emerged as a leading media tool. It was affordable, brought new ideas to the American home, and it allowed for a completely new culture to emerge. You had sports, music, family, advertising, even televangelists. No longer do you have to go outside for entertainment. You could just sit at home in your living room. However, some said that television was degrading to society's morals, but obviously that's not true. Fusion of black rhythm and blues and white bluegrass music, country styles, rock and roll emerged as an anthem for this new generation. The music crossed over from black and white audiences. This generation also created the beginning of the sexual revolution, with celebrities such as Marilyn Monroe, myself, Elvis Presley. This generation was exposed to new sexual expressions and freedoms. It was on TV, in the music, and even in emerging magazines like Playboy. The combination of music and sexual expression led to the clash between baby boomers and conformists.
The 1950s was a decade of immense growth for the United States. This decade gave birth to modern America that shaped the future of the United States.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock.